Diego J. Aranda Teixeira joins us now live from Tijuana, Mexico. Thanks so much for your time there. Now, firstly, can you just give us some more insight into how this new rule will actually be applied?
Sure, and thank you very much for having me. So the way that this rule will apply is that there's been a proposed rule presented by the Department of State affecting the way that B visas are issued. B visas are the non-immigrant visa classification for pleasure visas, because often people talk about B1, B2 visas like pleasure or business. So this is for what are called pleasure visas. So people who are coming here not to, for instance, engage in business meetings, but for instance, typically like tourist visas or visas for medical treatment. What has changed is that now, if a woman is considered, if there's a consular officer, so someone who works at the consulate who would be issuing the visa, believes they have what's called reason to believe that this relevant woman may give birth while in the United States, she is presumed to be traveling with the intention of giving birth inside of the United States. And that's now been reclassified as an improper reason to go to the United States, so a visa would be denied in those circumstances unless the presumption is somehow overcome.
But that's what I was going to ask you. I mean, how might it really work in practice? On paper, it might sound okay, but from what I understand, consular officers are told they can't directly ask women if they're pregnant. So, and also, what's stopping them from giving them a dishonest answer anyway? How effective could this policy really be in practice?
Well, unfortunately, I would say that we should be concerned about the fact that they're adding a new reason to believe ground. So reason to believe sounds all nice and reasonable normally, but the thing is, reason to believe grounds are problematic within immigration law in the United States because it's a very unchecked area of administrative discretion. Basically, it says, if for some reason the officer thinks this woman may be pregnant for any reason, that's good enough. It's not a good cause standard. It's not a reasonable standard, just reason to believe. If they have a hunch that a woman may be pregnant, that's enough. So, for instance, even if they're not going to be asking women, hi, are you pregnant? They basically, if they think a woman's looking a bit too glowing, or her body shape suggests there's a bump, then maybe a baby bump, that could be enough to raise this issue. And that's going to be very problematic because any person who, for some reason, looks some way that a consular officer thinks she may be pregnant could be affected. And at this point, certain racial and class stereotypes will probably apply. So if the consular officer happens to think that a particular type of person is likelier to be pregnant for some reason, they will be basically given tacit approval on just making those presumptions, even if they discriminate, typically, I would say, against women of color, particularly Latino women.
I suppose that's curious, though, isn't it? Because women, of course, have all types of skin. Some glow, some don't. Some women have all types of bumps on their bodies. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out in practice. But in terms of the countries that are targeted or not targeted, from what I understand, it doesn't apply to the 39 countries in the visa waiver program. Are there specific countries that are being targeted here, given the fact that most of those 39 countries are European countries?
Oh, exactly. That's a very good point. So it's not very clear from the rule itself that there's this exemption, but the thing is, this comes from the fact that visa waiver people are not traveling under what's called a B visa. So people who, for instance, enter without inspection, so who actually cross the border without going through an immigration officer, they're not included in this rule. And also people who are in the visa waiver program, this is not relevant to them because they don't have to apply for this visa in the first place. And yes, the thing is, the visa waiver countries are typically white, typically rich countries. And this reflects the preference that this administration has shown for countries of a certain, often racial type, to get preferential treatment, and people from other countries such as South Asian countries and Latino countries and countries full of women of color, like countries that the president has described in rather despective terms, those will be primarily targeted.
Okay, really interesting to talk to you. Thank you so much for your insight this evening, Attorney Diego J. Aranda Teixeira there for us from Tijuana, Mexico.